Okay, if you need anything, put it in the chat. Hopefully Carol will see it. She'll come running down the hall and fill me in on what I'm getting wrong or missing or anything. But appreciate folks joining us today. The 1964 World's Fair was divided into a number of zones. I've done a quick, brief overview of the whole fair in the past, but the fair was just so big and so much involved that there was, I thought going to a deep dive would be interesting. Yeah, that's the same Bruce Gordon of Postcard Collection fame. Bruce and Carol and I all worked at Imagineering together. So a small world at times. So let me just share the screen here. I will go and get the picture here started. No videos today, so I should make it easy. So we're going to start with a picture, just the map here of the Lake Amusement Area. When I went with my family by car, we generally parked down at the lower left, Gate 5, Meadow Lake Gate. There was also another parking lot at the other side of the lake, over there, the River Gate. And in the Lake Amusement Area in here, the picture of the map that's hanging over my desk actually has an element in here that's not on this map, the Jenny Lind showboat that was supposed to be there. Up here, there's also a big empty area where you see Chung King, and that was supposed to be an American Indian pavilion. So we'll go through each of those. But this is basically just an outline of what the Lake Amusement Area was. For the 1939-40 World's Fair, this was a very vibrant and very busy part of the fair. It's where they had an awful lot of the games of chance, just carnival rides and barkers, and see the woman frozen on a block of ice, and Olga, the headless woman, how long can she last? All sorts of carnival type things. It was also where they had a bunch of the nudity shows, that sort of thing. For the 64 fair, Moses decreed that none of that would exist. It was all going to be highbrow. They had already seen at the 62 World's Fair in Seattle that the tides were turning against the nudity shows. But Moses was very prim, very proper, and he did not want any sign of that at his fair. He also, as I said, took out all the midway carnival sort of things, which really hurt the Lake Amusement Area because there was no particular reason to go to a lot of it, as we'll go through the individual pavilions. And it didn't have the same sort of energy that other midways or gayways or whatever they were being called at the various fairs did. But we'll go through a circle. We're going to start at the lower left, work our way around, and hopefully hit all the various streets. It's a little piece of artwork the Fair Corporation had done promoting the Lake Amusement Area. As I said, you'll see the Indian Village over there, which never came to be. That was a very late cancellation for the fair. It was announced in very many of the publicity materials. They had cleared the site and they were ready to start construction, and basically they ran out of money. Up at the very top, the Texas pavilions, again, did not turn out the way they initially anticipated. One of these days, I'm going to do a talk on the World's Fair that was supposed to be and never was. You can see that circular set of rings going around that was surrounding a Mercury capsule promoting the Texas importance in the space race. But this gives us a general idea of coming in. We're going to see the Florida Pavilion. I don't think we're going to see too many mermaids out in the lake. The amphitheater, the circus, the monorail. So we'll take a quick look through them all. We're looking over at the Lake Amusement Area from the top of the New York State Pavilion. Again, the parking lot that we usually parked over on the far right, the parking lot on the left, a slightly bigger one. Just off to the, almost just a little to the left of dead center was the Sinclair gas station on that side of the lake, the gas station of the future. And just below that, if you can make it out on your screens, is a long rectangular building, about 1.5 stories tall with a flat, big roof on it. That was a boathouse. It was built from the 39 World's Fair, and it's still one of the very few 39 buildings still in existence back there. But again, this gives you an idea of Meadow Lake. It was, again, big area for the 39 fair, lots going on at night. And we're going to start coming through. You could walk your way in, you could get into a bus, or you could take one of the glider ride trams that Greyhound operated, and they would take you around the parking lot. Huge parking lot, not particularly well marked in terms of signage, so finding your way home at night sometimes was a bit of a challenge. But as you came walking up, here was your first view of the fair. You got the Florida Pavilion sitting there. Off to the right, the amphitheater. New York State Tower in the back. And we're walking up to the gate now. We're going to go spend our $2 or $1, depending how old you are, to get on in. Off to the right is one of the entrance pylons. These pylons were very big, very tall, and the idea was that you could find your way to or from the gates by looking at these. They had originally planned that they would be 2 pylons going up and then a horizontal piece going across to frame the entrance to the gate, but they later decided that they would just go with the 1 entrance pylon. These things were just huge. And we're walking into the gate. We have the Florida Tower there. I wanted to give you an idea of just size-wise how big this thing is. Here's a night view of it first. But here's the ball at the top of it. This is a 1963 view of it being delivered and waiting to go up on top of the tower. You can see the entrance pylon was already up. But this thing was absolutely huge. Quite a beacon to get you there. So Florida had been here in this spot in 1939 and decided to come back for 1964. The Fair Corporation made a big thing about how they were able to reuse some of the pylons for the 39 Fair, again for the 64. I don't think the footprint matched 100% if I compare aerial photographs, but for whatever reason, Florida decided that they wanted to be over here in the Lake Amusement Area other than with the other states. An overall aerial view, you can see they had the 2 circular buildings. You had the one on the right was where you had a dolphin show. The one on the left was the exhibits, and we'll take a look at some of those. And then again, this was the very far end of the fair, so all the buses, glider rides, everything would come down to this traffic circle, make a stop. There's the entrance gate just over to the right. So the Florida show was very popular. Over to the left, you could come and get your free Florida orange juice, a very big thing, and then you could go in to see the attractions inside. And then you have here a list of all the things to the right of all the things that were down in Florida that you could come and take a look at. And inside you had a bunch of birds, tropical birds. You had exhibits of the various cities, industries, things down in Florida that you would come to take visits at, come down, maybe retire. The retirement communities were just starting to be promoted, but lots of big things for tourism. Tampa, Florida's treasure city, a galleon, St. Petersburg. It was a kind of very busy area in there. You can see the hostess down below the St. Petersburg thing, dressed in kind of a piratey sort of garb, and they would all tell you the benefits of moving to their city. But the big thing was the porpoise show. It was a great show done every hour, as you can see there. Don, if you could mute everybody again, somebody's sneezing or coughing there, I'd appreciate it. The dolphin show is a real big thing for New York. Back then, if you remember the TV show Flipper was a big hit. We had the dolphins here. Now it seems obligatory that many theme parks must have a dolphin show, just like they must have a Skyway or whatever. Muted. All right, I should be unmuted. Somebody wave if you can hear me.
Sorry about that, Bill.
No problem. Okay. So the dolphin show is really popular. The stands are usually sold out, filled to capacity. It was just a great time to see the dolphins. They had some seal acts, other odds and ends, but it was a huge thing. Bringing the dolphins down there was quite an effort. They had to bring them back to Florida during the off season and then bring them back again for the 65 season. It was also a big thing in New York to see palm trees. I mean, obviously, those of us from New York know it's not a native plant. They had to do a lot of work to try to preserve these in the winter season, and then they also had to find they had to replace a bunch when they did not survive the winter. They also brought in a flamingo exhibit. Excuse me, lots of the birds wandering around. They also had an alligator wrestling show where a Seminole Indian would wrestle the alligator. There's a famous story that the alligator got loose one day and they had to have a Florida State Trooper catch it. And he actually picked it up and carried it back over to the pavilion on one of the Greyhound buses. But it was very, very scenic area. This was kind of an interesting view. This is between the 2 seasons, and you can see they've taken off the sign about telling you about the porpoise show every hour, and they were telling everybody, wouldn't you rather be in Florida? That was a brilliant piece of marketing. Made all the New York papers. They would have people posing in heavy coats, snow and everything. And here's this big sign back there telling you, wouldn't you rather be in Florida? Going further past Florida, we come to the AMF Monorail. That's an impressive station. The brown building in front was the office building for the AMF Corporation, known to most of us for making bowling pin setters, but they were very big into the monorail concept, thinking that this was going to be a big thing for the future. Absolutely massive system ran around the lake area. It was only allowed to have one stop. You were not allowed to get on and get off because of a contract the World's Fair Corporation had done with Greyhound. The Greyhound would be the exclusive transportation company of the World's Fair. So this had to be viewed as an amusement ride as opposed to a transportation system. So you basically just went and took a tour of the Lake Amusement Area and got on, got off at the same station. So we have the hostess here waiting for the train coming in. The whole system was completely computer controlled. You can see the dispatch booth in the right over there. They had hostesses on board the monorails that could give narration, but they were also there to just calm people down because the idea of a computerized train system was absolutely unheard of at this point in time, and people were freaking out the thought that what if anything went wrong? So, but it was a great system, very scenic. If you rode in the monorail, if you went up in the front, there was this control panel, which was really great if you thought somebody had to drive the monorail. The only thing that worked on it was the pull to blow horn thing off to the left. It was a totally non-functional control panel, but kids could get a good time of blowing the horn. And as I said, it made a loop around the whole area. Down below, we see the Continental Circus. There was also a Meridian Road for the bus system going around. It was a dual track system, one going in one direction, one going in the other. Down at the station, when you got back for the 65 season, you can see the James Bond car. And this was a huge, huge hit. They brought in the Aston Martin DB5s. Goldfinger had been a huge hit. The car was down there. They opened it up. They would show you the various gimmicks, the machine guns. They did not fire anybody out through the ejector seat, but it was a huge hit for the fair. After that, the car went on tour, and I can remember when I came to the shopping center in my town in Baldwin, and everybody just ran out of school to go see the James Bond car, but it was a big hit at the fair. There was also this fake monorail down below where kids could pose that they were driving it and get their pictures taken. And there were also some of these silly pictures that you could come and take pictures and send them back to the family at home. Very scenic. I just love the way this lit up at night with the translucent panels of the station. And the monorail, by the way, after the fair was taken down, and it was not sold to the Simpsons as we see here. It was actually sold to a guy that had the plan of bringing it down to Texas and running it at an airport in Texas, and it never came to be. The cars were left out in the field. He then ended up using them, at least one of them as a playground or play yard, play toy for his kids. They disappeared about 8 years ago and haven't been seen, and they've probably been scrapped. But if you ever see the episode of The Simpsons, Marge versus the monorail, they buy a new monorail for the town. Basically, a guy comes in like the Music Man, convinces them they need a monorail. In typical Simpson fashion, Homer destroys the monorail and I think half the town. But as the thing is falling to pieces because they can't break it, this sticker here peels off, and you see that it was the '64 World's Fair monorail. So great episode of The Simpsons if you ever get a chance to see it. And again, looking across from the main part of the fair, we see the monorail going by the circus tent here. And this is the Ringling Brothers Circus Museum. The circus here was kind of an example of why the Lake Amusement Area failed to be a major success. When my parents would take us to this fair, we'd park and they would race us through this area as fast as possible to get to the real World's Fair, because the feeling was I can always go see another circus. I can always go see another water show. I can always go see a lot of different things, but I can't see the Carousel of Progress. I can't see the Ford ride, so a lot of these people, you wonder if they had done much marketing, planning or thinking or how they came up with it. But the circus was only there for the '64 season. A lot of these shows did not return. And you could get your picture taken with a giant ape. He was inside on display. Going further down, we come to the Santa Maria. This was a copy, a actual full-size copy that floated and that was out there on the lake. They built it as Christopher Columbus's spaceship. Uh, when I do my talk on what became of Pieces of the Fair, this had a real sad ending afterwards. But you could go out onto go through this fake fortress area, walk into the ship out there. They put signage on it after a while because people weren't quite sure what ship that was. But on board the ship, they had mannequins showing how they would sail over here in the real Santa Maria. Crow's Nest up there. And you could take tours of it. You could go visit Christopher Columbus's cabin. They supposedly had a piece of his actual bones on board. It was just fun to wander around the ship. There's just some views of that. And again, that's supposed to be part of Christopher Columbus's relics in that little ark back there. So it was kind of interesting. If you come out of there, you can see a sign over here for the Meadow Lake cruise. And that was a set of flatbed pontoon boats that you could get on. They would take you out for a tour of the lake. There was on most of these, a very prominent cooler full of Coca-Cola products that you could go out and enjoy a nice cold soft drink as you were out on Meadow Lake. And it was kind of a pleasant way to go and spend your time out there. Meadow Lake's a lot bigger than most people realize. If you look at this picture, it kind of gives you an idea. It's a pretty good sized body of water. So again, they were trying to come and convince you you'd like to get one of these boats and buy it, but in the meantime, how about go for a ride? We're looking down from overhead and one of the helicopter shots. And again, to orient ourselves, we have the Santa Maria there, and off to the left, we have the amphitheater. Which now resides, as we were saying earlier, in large part in Joey's house. The amphitheater had been built for the 3940 World's Fair. It was the New York State Pavilion at that particular fair, and had been the home of the Billy Rose Aquacade. So in between the fairs, it was a swimming area, a pool for the local community, and then they brought it back for the 64 fair, adding this major roof area to it. And the thing was Leonard's Wonder World rather. So it was a big stage show. We can see some of the Pinkerton guards going by. There's a group bandstand over there that they were having some singers out front. But here is a fascinating, super-sized show. Crazy costumes, women in bathing suits. How can you go wrong? So inside, at night, this in night view, this was kind of interesting. This set of lights blinking outside, sort of random patterns, just to draw attraction to the place. So inside it was a huge show, big stage show, lots of singing, dancing. You can see from the audience here, not a lot of people, but a lot of performers. So the big show, this is an Olympic salute to the Olympics that are going by. I get a kick out of some of the signs in the back. There's one for Ballantine beer. Again, a big one if you're an ex-New Yorker. They had High Dives Act, reminiscent of the Billy Rose Aquacade. They had a whole salute to the Valley High type of thing off to the jungles of the Pacific. Then at the end, they came out for a very patriotic measure. That rocket in the back would actually lift up with a giant roar. The roof rolled back so it would disappear up out of sight. And you had the Bell Rocket Man fly over. And if you got a chance to see this thing, it was as loud as you could believe. Luckily, at this part of the show, you can see the roof has been rolled back, but it just echoed throughout this area like crazy. I don't think I'd ever heard anything this loud until I went to work at Cape Kennedy and heard real rockets taking off. But it was pretty impressive to have the Rocket Man fly around, make a loop of the stage area. Nighttime was, again, big show. Really, they went way out to try to make this thing a hit. But as you can see, people just did not come because it was basically a 1 hour show. There were never any long lines, so you didn't have to worry about spending a lot of time waiting to get in. But it was an hour waiting for this thing that you didn't see the real World's Fair unique stuff. So Wonder World did not last the entire 64 season. Here's a sign down below. The main sign is still up in the building, but down below you can see the summertime review from Clay Cole, New York disc jockey. He brought in some rock and roll acts. Robert Moses found out about it, went absolutely ape. Again, he did not like anything modern, so he shut down the Clay Cole review. It sat there empty for the rest of the 64 season. There might have been one or two minor musical things in there, but pretty much it was not used. But it had a new life. In 1965, Florida opened a second pavilion. They had their main pavilion with the porpoise show. And then they decided to come back with a water ski show that was brought in, totally revamped the building. It didn't open when the fair first opened because frankly, it was just too cold. So it opened on May 8th, 1965. And they had a big thing with, they had all the speedboats with county names on it, salute to the United Nations going around here, and various countries that were exhibiting. And lots of women on water skis, people jumping boats over things, people jumping water skis over things. It was much, much more popular than the 64 show had been. If you look at this particular picture, this was much more typical of crowd shots of the 65 season. In the background, the Hawaii Pavilion, we'll get over there in just a moment. Just on the other side of the Aquacade was another lake cruise. This was done with amphicars, so amphibious cars. And it was a big thing. You could have your flatbed boat over there that you could ride around, or you could go off into the lake in one of these amphibious cars. I imagine if you look how the guy in the back is kind of rearing back, it has to be quite a shock when that wave of water came hitting up as your car dove into the lake. This kind of reminds me of the scenes of the flying sub from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea diving in. And it doesn't look like it's going to make it, but they came out, they turned around, they came back. And it was pretty popular. We see 4 amphicars in this one shot going around the lake. Again, in the background, the boathouse left from the '39 World's Fair. And it was a very popular ride. And it was a great spot to do it. The lake is very calm, very placid, so you didn't have to worry about your boat car getting swamped. Coming further along, we come to Hawaii. This is actually from outside the gate, gate number 6 looking in. Very popular exhibit. Hawaii went way out. It was still a very new state to us at the time. So they were really trying to promote themselves for tourism and getting folks to come over. So thatched huts and that. This is the main building that when you went in, you got to look at the displays and that. They charged admission to it. It's 25 cents, but when you came in, you got a plastic lei, and you can see people all over the fair wearing little orange leis like this one. And you can view from the monorail, the gift shop, and some of the other huts. So they had a number of things in here. They had displays of pineapples. Again, probably the only time pineapples have ever grown in New York. Over to the left was a machine here for 10 cents. You could stand on it and refresh your tired feet. They would vibrate. But they had put big signs up about do not pick the pineapples. The water's not treated. And you'll see the ground was electrically heated because that's the only way pineapples could grow in New York. They had a hula show, which was really big in here. So you had dance acts going on, people doing their flaming torches. Very popular show. I don't know, again, how big hula had been in New York up to that point in time, but very, very well attended at the hula show. You also, over here, you have the Volcanoes restaurant. And I don't think we ever ate there that I can remember. I'm just trying to think. I don't think the family ever went there. So it's more of an upscale place than our budget would have allowed. You could also go for a different ride on the lake. You could go on outrigger canoes. There's the gate in the back and the entrance pylon. But you could go and get a tour out there on the lake and be paddled around in style. There's one of the feathers hats in the center that we see in so many pictures of the fair. And here again is the other gate, huge parking lot. Just to the left of the pylon, you can make out part of the Sinclair gas station of the future back there. We're again looking at a helicopter view. This is the Texas Pavilion in the basically the majority of the picture. where it says music hall. So Hawaii off to the right, Texas in the center, and down below Dancing Waters. We'll get there in a few moments. But Texas was a massive pavilion. They actually called it the Texas Pavilions, plural, because there were so many different buildings on the site. What they'd done was put in a large music hall. You can see the sign up there, To Broadway with Love. And it was a very elaborate show, a salute to Broadway. They did not use traditional Broadway songs and just recap them. They wrote new music for this. They brought in big time performers. Goldie Hawn actually got her start as a performer, as one of the dancers in it. It was a huge show. When you came in at the main entrance, they had box office booths all over the place trying to sell you tickets to it. And it was very well done. People that saw the show said you couldn't go wrong with it. The costumes were great. The sets were great. The music was great. The big problem, though, again, the real Broadway was less than 30 miles away. So if you had a chance to come to New York and see a Broadway show, you might as well go to Broadway and see Hello, Dolly, My Fair Lady, some of the real shows that were on at the point in time. People did not want to spend an hour to an hour and a half of their time going to this particular show when they wanted to see the World's Fair and not see Broadway. So this was one of the first failures of the fair. I think the first one that closed was the ice show. And I think this might have been second and the Wonder World third. I might be off on the order of that, but it did not last very long. So you'll see for the rest of the season, the monorail is going around, the signage is down. It no longer says Texas, no longer says Music Hall, no longer says To Broadway with Love. It's sat empty for the rest of the 64 season. It did have one part that stayed open for both years, the Frontier Palace Restaurant, very popular steak spot for the fair. If you look here from a 65 view, you can see a sign over to the left. It no longer says Music Hall, it says Carnival. A Chinese businessman got a lease on it and filled the building with different sorts of rides and carnival attractions, trying to make some money out of it and put it back on the map. He also put, as you can see here, a discotheque inside. This is kind of interesting. This is actually a 65 view, but it was a leftover from the Texas days, a horse outside. And he also had added other things like this wild mouse ride, a mini roller coaster type attraction. So Carnival was popular, but not a huge hit, but it was enough that he made money on it, and it paid off. And it also was a huge help to the 64, 65 fair by not leaving such a massive piece of the pavilion empty. Hawaii in the background, and we have some of these rides here. This was an area called Kittyland. So you had a bunch of these traditional amusement park rides. And again, we never went on them when my family visited, because you could go to these at any one of a number of other rides or amusement parks around. But they did seem pretty popular, particularly in the evening as people were heading home and they had some extra spare change. They would hop on some of these rides and go and help themselves out. This one I got a real kick out of. If you can see, there's a sign, miniature golf, 50 cents. So I would say, what were they thinking? Again, I'm going to drive to the World's Fair. I'm going to pay for parking. I'm going to pay for admission. And now I'm going to go do miniature golf, when there was probably a miniature golf course in 98% of the places where these people had come from anyway. But you had the rotojet rides for spinning around. You had all sorts of things. Now for spinning around, another one that was more fun was the J-copter. Was a pseudo helicopter. We see it off to the left there. You would actually get in this thing, and it was built, originally designed to train pilots for flying real helicopters. That never really took off. It didn't really succeed, but it was a heck of an amusement park ride. You would get into this thing, and it would lift you up into the air. You got pretty high up, as you can see from this view of it. And it was held with this giant counterweight on the back to give you some ability to lift the thing up. And they had two different ones. They swapped out a smaller one for a larger cabin because it was popular. They could hold more people on it. And it was noisy, got a lot of attention, and it was kind of a fun ride. It was a neat sort of way to go around. The thing spun and went up, down, turned all around. It was a lot of fun. When you got down to the ground, there were these baby J-copters. That's in the back under each of those bubble areas there. For a quarter, you could drop in and you could try to fly your own little mini helicopter around. And then in the back of that picture, you'd seen the log flume ride. This was a big thing. Again, log flume rides are taken for granted these days, but bringing one of these things into the 64 fair was really a spectacular coup for the fair to do it. We'll get back to the log flume in a second. Dancing Waters was in this giant inflatable tent. You could go and see the extra added attraction, the Butterfly Girl, 2 attractions for 1 admission. And inside you had colored water, fountains, lights, and basically the music and the fountains were all synchronized. So there was a paper tape that ran, controlled the fountain jets to control the lights, and then the woman would come out and dance with her butterfly wings and blend into the show. Again, we'll get over to the log flume. This was very popular. As you can see, people having a great time. They look like they've just gotten a little bit wet. It was great, great fun to go on a hot day, take your family out there. It was a great exhibit. There were actually 2 tracks on this particular system. It was so popular, they were able to run it, both sets of it almost all the time. After the fair, this ended up in Florida at a place called Pirate World Theme Park, along with some of the other parts of the Lake Amusement Area, but the super popular ride. This was the aerial tower ride, very ungainly looking thing, but you would basically get into one of those cars. It would lift you up to the top. It would slowly rotate, and then they would put you back down to the ground. This is another ride that after the fair ended up at Pirate World. And it was kind of interesting that a number of years ago, I got involved. Some lawyers needed a lot of pictures of the aerial tower ride. This was, again, a good 30 years after the fair ended, and it turned out somebody had decided to build their own aerial tower ride someplace else, and the guys that built this one were claiming patent infringement. They were having a huge battle. It does not look like the sort of ride that you think people would get that involved on, or want to get involved in copyright issues, but that was the aerial tower ride. At the base of this was one of the Belgium waffle restaurants, very popular. And you can see again the thing standing up high over the area. Carousel Park we'll get to in a little bit more. We're continuing a big loop around. We get to the only part, I think, of the fair that had nudity in it, the Sid and Marty Krofft's puppet show. Adults only, because we're going to have this adult theme. This had been very, very popular at the 62 Seattle World's Fair, brought down here to New York. And it was very enticing as you came up to it. You had all these gals in their showgirl type costumes. So obviously this is going to be a Las Vegas type review, right? With nudity and dancing women and all this sort of thing. It was a brilliant smash hit. And you see they had the names of all these celebrities. They were the ones that did the pre-recorded voices. You did not go in there and see Pearl Bailey or Jane Mansfield in person. But when you got inside, what you saw was a giant puppet show. And they had here Maurice Chevalier is doing his bit, and they had some bare-chested puppet dolls. And again, supposedly that set Robert Moses off. So here's Liberace doing his bit, and again, his recorded voice would accompany the puppet piece of it. Well, the puppet show was not quite as big a hit in 64 as it had been in 62. So they also decided they would draw people in by having bands play outside, do anything you can to get attention to your particular show. Further down, Walter's International Wax Museum, we see the Beatles are here. That was a big addition that they added into it during the fair. The Beatles, for those of us that grew up in that area, could not be unstated how what a huge hit they were. So they came in here and they had them here in the fair. It's kind of interesting that in the early part of the fair, he's holding this guitar off to the left. For some reason now it's just standing off, and in other shots the guitar is totally missing. So Ed Sullivan had become famous for putting them on his show. But they had all sorts of other displays inside. You could see Lady Godiva. This is out of Dr. Kildare, Toulouse-Lautrec, Robin and the Seven Hoods. And this was kind of an interesting one. In all the DC Comics of the time, they had this ad: come to the World's Fair and visit Walter's International Wax Museum, see Superman the Giant Cyclops, and if you cut the coupon out, you got the reduced admission. A lot of people cut that out. So a lot of the comics from 64 and 65 have this hole in it that brings their value down. But well, this was a big thing to come and see Superman and the giant Cyclops. And when you got in, there was the Cyclops and there was Superman. Oh, I thought I had 2 pictures of Cyclops. What was really interesting about this is that was one of the actual costumes used by George Reeves in the filming of the Superman TV show. Years after the fair ended, the costume had ended up going to a community college in New Jersey, and somebody got in touch with DC Comics trying to authenticate what it was because it had Reeves' name written into the costume. And it got into a big custody battle, DC wanting their costume back, the college saying, no, we were given it. And then the costume mysteriously disappeared one night, so nobody knows. Probably somebody from the college has it in their basement and wears it Halloween costumes. But back at this point in time, nobody thought about these things. All these costumes were the property originally of Western Costuming, a big company out here in California. And you could actually go to Western Costume and check out or rent a Superman costume that had been used in the show. So they had drilled some small holes in this one to hold the Superman figure in the air so it looked like it was flying. It was kind of an interesting piece of trivia. Another thing that was real popular was the Chungking restaurant here. Chinese meals for only 99 cents, including drink. Super popular restaurant. Had been at the 62 Seattle Fair, had been popular there. Oh, I did have a second picture. Sorry, I got them out of order. So you can see again more of the Superman costume and the wires that they had holding him up there. So we'll go back to Chungking, 99 cents. You got your whole meal there. You could go and get your picture taken in a rickshaw. He looks just thrilled to be at the World's Fair, doesn't he? She's a little happier. But Chungking was a popular thing. As you see, it says canned foods. You could go and buy Chungking Chinese meals at the market, bring them home, and you have a can of noodles, dried noodles, or a can of hot foods. Where they weren't hot, you had to make them hot yourself. But you open them up, canned food, and go off and cook it. So very popular restaurant at the fair. You can see it in the background here. So I like the international flavor of this. He's got a beret. Her hat looks sort of Swiss, and in the back you have the Chungking sign. Egg rolls, they have little stands put out front. So if you didn't want to wait online for the whole restaurant, you could just get some snacks. Very, very popular spot to eat in the Lake Amusement Area. Again, we're going to fly overhead again in the helicopter. If you look down, there's a big empty square. That's where the Indian Pavilion was supposed to be. And they had cleared the ground, graded it, all set to start construction, and it fell through. So this was a tremendous eyesore for the World's Fair Corporation. You had the bridge, the Meadow Lake Bridge, going across over to the main part of the field fair, and everybody that came over the bridge got to look down at this dirt field. So luckily, an entrepreneur came by and said, I will put something in there called Carousel Park. He went and found 2 merry-go-rounds, carousels, and put them together to make one, and brought it out here and put it out here with along snack bars, pizza places, all sorts of little odds and ends to keep you busy. And it was a nice addition to the fair. You can see going around it, you could get fruit, you could get steak, you could get fried chicken. This was a much needed food area for this part of the park. And this is the carousel that is still in the park today. Monorail going by. This particular shot, you can see it must have been a very busy day near the end of the fair. People were parking their car on the side of the road and just walking in. But there's the lots of the elements going on. Not many people there this particular day. But free admission, come down. Not the carousel wasn't free, but you got to come down and eat, look at the food places for free. One of the Red Cross stands, that the first aid stands were put up around the fair. And this was a late addition into the fair. I think this was only there for the 65 season. You had puffed rice, the cereals that was shot from guns, puffed wheat, puffed rice from Quaker. They had this giant replica of a cereal box, and a performer would come walking out of there, get into the giant cannon, and then be shot out into the air across the grounds. So that would be it for a look at the Lake Amusement Area. As I, let's see, I'll go through the comments here in a second. It was an interesting part of the fair. Again, a lot of us ran through it and ran in and out as quick as you could because the real fair, the good stuff was inside. If you had the money to go to some of the shows like to Broadway with Love or to see Wonder World, you might have enjoyed it. But for most people, they didn't, and they didn't have the time, even if they had the money. So this was probably the most disappointing part of the fair. When I get to the deep dives and the others, we'll see lots of excitement and shows and that. But let me just go through the comments here. Oh, well, a whole bunch. Okay. Jim Brown, you have a panorama image of the area queued up, so if you'd like to share it, sure, Jim, where are you? Here, need to find you here to allow you to present. I'm
Okay.
looking. Oh, there you are. Here, 1 second. Okay, Jim, you should be able to share your picture.
Okay, be right there. We go. Okay, this is a Google shot. We can pan around, just pan around the area to see what it looks like today. There's the lake. Now, do you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, that's the boathouse back there that's still there. And this is a little concession stand. The foundations that are poking up are right there. They're all over the place. Look at this one. One day a group of us were out there and we were standing around on these and almost falling off them. They're so high. But the edge of the stage or the water part of the stage ended somewhere around these barriers here. The front of the pavilion, the Billy Rose Aquacade, was somewhere around here, just before that road that cuts across here that has the monorail. And there's the bridge in the background. And where the Carousel Park was, just in front of it, is now a bathhouse for men's and women's rooms. Now over here, this is the snack stand. And these little round things you see here, they were all over the original Aquacade, and they picked them up and used them here as well. One of our people, Mitch, feels that maybe these are reproductions. It's a little hard to tell. They look really close. Now, this is some of the relief sculpture on all four sides below the serving counter are these relief sculptures. And this one over here, right where I'm pointing here on the left side, is where it mistakenly says 1963, which we think is the copyright date. And when they carved it, they just picked up the anything that had a date on it and figured, well, that must be the date. So this structure here is sitting right about over on stage left. And right now, this camera is probably sitting in the water portion of the stage. And back here would be the dry land area upstage where the various backdrops would be. And way over here, there used to be, you could see the footings for the monorail way over on this end, but they had since dug them all up to refurbish that whole area and put in new walkways. And so the pilings that are poking up are no longer seen over there. So, and way off here, you can see the New York State Pavilion. So while I still have this slide up, anybody have any questions on it?
Well, I'm glad they took some of those pilings out because they made walking on some of those walkways a real challenge. I know the skateboarders liked it.
Oh yeah, well this one right here is actually in the middle of a walkway because there are the cobblestones from this new walkway that they, this is all going to have to be torn out and redone.
Shows you how much the ground subsided. Great, thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Like just going through the other questions here, the Jenny Lind boat, yeah, it was supposed to be a big show, and they were going to have basically a dinner show on it. It was going to be Michael Todd, and he was going to have this huge thing out there. It got really close to the end, and all of a sudden canceled. So he moves this show over to the Louisiana Pavilion, and when we take the deep dive there, we'll talk about what a disaster that was. That was the quickest closing show at the fair by far. The amphitheater was, yes, totally redone between the seasons. They ripped out everything that was in there for the stage that had been done for Wonder World and put in the boat area that they could all race around in there. Rob Bianco said he was on the aerial tower ride the day before people were stranded. Yeah, they had a problem. You can imagine getting on that thing, going up there, and all of a sudden not coming back down. I don't know how long they were stranded up there. It was enough that it made the papers. It was unlike the people that get stuck on the parachute ride for this 39 World's Fair that made the papers, because it turned out a guy and his girlfriend were there, and the guy's wife was not pleased to read about it in the newspaper the next day. But I never heard that the 64 people caused any scandal. Derek's saying it was 30 years later, no patent would be valid. They only last 18 years. Yeah, I don't know what was involved with it, Derek. They just wanted pictures. I gave it to them. They went away, and I never heard how it turned out. The large foundation for the tower ride is still there. Yep, you can make out the site of that. Again, it was a lot cheaper for people just to leave these things in there and run away from it and leave. Well, Don Lancaster mentioned the puppet show. Yes, it was at Hemisphere in San Antonio. Don't know how popular it was there, but it was one of the few shows that's gone on to multiple fairs. Oh, the nerveless Knox. Yeah, Richard Henning mentioned that. Matter of fact, the Knox are part of the 64 Facebook group on the 64 Fair group on Facebook. They had these huge giant poles that would get up there and they would move and bend around, and it was a great aerial act. I forgot that. I'll have to, if I ever do this, I'll have to add that back in. It was right down near the Hawaii Pavilion, I think near Hawaii and the amphitheater, and very amazing how these things would spin around, and they would be tethered to them and go flinging out. It was a great act, the nerveless Knox. Yeah, that's right. And Bella Knock, which he tried to win on America's Got Talent, didn't. And I don't know how he did not win. It was a great act. So great. Other thoughts folks have? How many people did go to the one of the rides looked like the original Disneyland Astrojets made by the same company. Yep. Yeah, they were the same amusement park ride. Just go and plunk them down, just like they plunked them down at Disneyland. They plunked them down at the 65 fair. I don't think they were there for the 64 season. So who else?
Bill?
Joey, yes.
The Quaker Oats guy that got shot out of the cannon, where did he land?
A giant net. And it was almost always his wife that did it. Almost all the performer shots I have are it was a husband-wife team. But they set up a giant net. It was done on a temporary basis where, before the show, they raised it up, went in, and took it back down. But it was actually went right over a large portion of the audience. So if you were there, you could get the picture of the person flying over your head. So it was a great act. I've somewhere I have an 8mm movie of them doing it and all the big run up to it. It's silent, so you don't hear what they're saying. But
Right.
It's one of those things. The build up lasts 10 minutes and the show lasts 8 seconds. But yeah, they did that about 8 times a day to shoot people through the cannon.
Thanks,
And
Bill.
down below, if you went to the giant house, the giant box of cereal, you got little samples of puffed rice and puffed wheat cereal.
Hey, Bill, that was a really nice presentation. Just like you, we always parked on the other side of the lake in the bigger lot, and we had to go through the amusement area. We couldn't get through it fast enough just to get into the fair. Our thought was, with all the wonderful free things in the fair, why waste time and money in there to see carnival rides or amusement rides? So with your presentation, this is the first time I've ever really seen what was in there in detail. I have no idea, but I still wouldn't have spent the money for it.
Yeah, when my dad went, and I had 4 younger brothers, so there were all 7 of us. He was, budget-wise, we were not going to be going to see some of those shows. When I went by myself or with my brother Jim, it was just the 2 of us. So it was like, oh, let's go see the dolphins. Let's go do the J-copter. So I think even the monorail, as much as I like monorails, I think I only did it once because, again, there was a fee for all these things. But when there was so much free stuff on the other side of that bridge, and again, dinosaurs on the other side of the bridge, and trips under the ocean on the other side of the bridge and everything, the foot traffic. I actually have on my site a letter from the guy that was running the Orange Julius concession at the Texas Pavilion, writing to the World's Fair Corporation, begging to be let out of his lease because he said, basically, you promised us all sorts of traffic. We're not seeing it. I've laid off everybody but a skeleton crew. I just can't afford to keep running this thing. And I just want to get out of my lease, because everybody just ran like you did, Irv, like my family did. It had a lot of foot traffic through the area, but you imagine the pavement was probably worn to a groove straight from the entrance thing up over the bridge and out.
Yeah, they missed a great opportunity not circling the monorail around the entire fairground for a transportation system. That would have been phenomenal at the end of the day, just to get back to the parking lot. But you couldn't do it. Yeah, when they built Expo in '67 in Montreal, at least the amusement area there, they had some decent rides, and they were open till like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. So when the pavilions closed, you had someplace else to go and something to do.
Yeah, Disney had looked into putting a functional monorail that would go all around the property and be left as a permanent structure after the fair closed, which in retrospect, how many people would be riding the monorail in the middle of winter in Flushing Meadows. But if you go to my site under the miscellaneous tab of taking the tour, there's the whole Disney proposal, the cost of how much this thing was going to cost to build, how much it's going to cost to operate, the ongoing costs after the fair. So they had a giant interest in doing it. And then unfortunately, the lawyers popped up and said, can't do it. Goodyear's got the, not Goodyear, the bus company, Greyhound's got the exclusive rights to a transportation system. So Disney had no interest in just building a giant loop. So that was the end of that. There was also another system they were talking about. It was called a Carveyor system, which would have taken you from the main entrance across the fairgrounds over to the Unisphere and back again. And that fell through. So again, lawyers, I mean, the contracts for the fair were astonishing. The U.S. Royal Giant Tire had the exclusive rights to be the only giant tire at the fair. So when they put a giant tractor tire behind the Illinois Pavilion, they had to get an exception that it was an exhibit and not a ride. So the lawyers kept real busy.
Wouldn't you rather have taken a high-tech monorail ride than a Greyhound bus? Think about it.
Oh, absolutely. And the diesel fumes, the buses and that sort of thing. I mean, yeah. Don Lancaster's mentioning Expo 67. I really need to update my website for 67. I did the website by hand years ago, and then now everything's got to be done for mobile devices. So I've got the 64 fair done for mobile devices. I actually have about a third of Expo 67 done and coded. It's just not online yet. Now that I'm stuck here in the pandemic world, as soon as I finish working on my Boy Scout site, I'm going to get back to Expo 67 and try to do every pavilion at Expo 67, just like I've done every pavilion for the 64 fair. I've got probably about 13,000 photos from Expo 67. I've got to make use of them.
Did you take most of the photos that we saw today?
No, again, at this particular point in time, we ran through this area really fast. I took some, excuse me, I always like to half joke that the really bad ones are the ones I took. The good ones are the ones I bought. But, excuse me, frog in my throat. I had an uncle, and I've mentioned this before, was really into photography, and he helped me an awful lot with some of this stuff. But a lot of the pictures I took back at that point in time, I was still trying to learn what an f-stop was and shutter speed. And so I have a lot of pictures that are just slightly blurry or not well backlit, things like that. And again, I did not have any particular interest in taking pictures of the roto-jets, things like that. So at age 12, I was more interested in the Sinclair dinosaurs. Got lots of pictures of those. Conan O'Brien wrote the monorail episode. Oh, I did not know that. That's interesting. Yeah, it's a great episode. If you go online and watch it, it's like I said, the real music man, huckster type guy comes to town, sells them the monorail, and disastrous results. But kind of fun to see, remnants, at least in pop culture. And when the sticker pulls back, the 64 World's Fair. At least it didn't say 63 World's Fair. So again, I appreciate folks joining. The Lake Amusement Area was total departure from the 39 World's Fair. I would have loved to have seen the 39 World's Fair Lake area with all the carnival acts and sideshows and all the rest of it. So the whole thing with Moses, he just wanted a very staid, proper show, and that's what he got. And even like I mentioned, the Clay Cole show. This was you think about it, you had this giant amphitheater. You could have brought the Beatles in and played there. You know, you could have had I don't know how many different rock groups and everything. So there were rock groups they let play at the New Jersey Pavilion. They let play at the New York State Pavilion. We've seen pictures of them playing outside the Wax Museum. But think about the shows they could have had in there. Baron, you wanted to say something? You need to unmute.
Yeah, if you really think about it, Bill, I don't want to go to Disney World to see carnival barkers and sideshows and women with a beard and things like that when I go to Disney World. When I go to the local carnival in town, yeah, that's fine. But I can understand Robert Moses and his concept of wanting to keep that area clean, pristine, more, less, as it was, like it was in 39. But I think also there's a different time too. 39, 40, carnivals were big then. 64, 65 carnivals were big, but not as big as they were. The carnival didn't come to town on the rail. And so I don't think the fanfare of carnivals was as attractive in 64 and 65 as it was in 39 and 40 in the early part of our country. So early time of our country. So I kind of agree with Moses. I wouldn't want to go to the fair to, maybe the little kids would love to see it, but I don't think I'd want to go to the World's Fair and see it like I wouldn't want to go to Disney World right now, 3 hours away from me to go see it. So that's just a thought.
Yeah. In 64, there weren't all that many carnival rides in there. But in 1939, the carnival area extended all down the east side of the lake. So it was a much larger area with more attractions.
Much larger. The basic concept, Baron, was that 39, you went there at night. During the day was, not the biggest, most well-attended area. But when all the other pavilions started closing down during the day, for the daytime operations, the whole thing was keep a vibrant area with lots going on at night. And there just wasn't a lot going on at night over at the lake area. And that's where the real departure came. But like when I was putting together the pictures, I was just looking, I thought I had one. I found one picture between two buildings of a hit the cat with a ball thing. And I have no idea what hit the cat. Hopefully it was not a real cat. And that's the only sort of sideshow thing I found in that area. But there just wasn't a lot to hold you in that area at night. In 65, you had the discotheque, brought people over. But for the most part, when the fair ended, you just walked over the bridge, walked by all the pavilions, and, because again, a lot of these shows were not running at night, so they just went home. And that's where the lack of energy came from, that there was no nighttime silliness to it. So, again, with Moses, I appreciate everything Moses did. I think he did a few too many, things of, prim and proper, and some fun at the fair wouldn't have been a bad idea. I mean, just, some happy medium. You didn't need to have, the Sally Rand Nude Ranch or something, but, like at the 64 World's Fair, the Gateway was real popular. One of the big things was just like, going to the things, throwing the balls, trying to win a big stuffed doll and walk around with it. There was none of that game of chance sort of thing that was just real popular for that particular show. And if you go to Expo 67 at Laron, the amusement area, they had a bunch of those things to win a Cupid doll and that, and those were popular with people. So. Well, I appreciate folks joining us, and I hope everybody's off to a great start for the new year, and that the weather is not too terrible in other parts of the country. We had incredible winds out here again all week this week, and it was nice that today looks like it's going to be quiet. It's going to be in the 60s and 70s, and it's life is good out here in paradise. So appreciate. Next week, any particular part of the 64 fair people would like to see in detail next week?
How about the transportation area?
Yeah, I could do the transportation area. I can fit
That's
that
a
in.
good idea.
I was just
Yeah.
thinking the same thing.
Great. What I thought I would do is go through each of the areas, maybe not, stay with the 64 fair for 9 weeks in a row or something. But Joey was, for example, saying he had some artifacts from the Aquacade to show. What I thought I'd do is go through the 64 fair with a bunch of the deep dives, and then people had mentioned one about how it was built and torn down. And I was going through, that's why I had a whole bunch of pictures of them building the Florida Pavilion, building the Aquacade, building it. So I saved off all the construction, and I also saved off all the sad demolition shots that I'll do that at another thing. But next week I'll plan on doing the transportation area of the fair. And in meantime, Joey and Jim, I need you to go back and dig up the Underground World Home so you can show us what that looks like today.
I actually do have diagrams and stuff and aerial views and stuff where we calculate exactly where the bunker was situated. So I can show them when you get to that point. But don't forget to bring Barry on the show.
Yeah,
And-
we have to do that.
Yeah.
Is that underground home still there? Is the underground home still in place? Do we know
We
that?
don't know. We think there's remnants of it, maybe like concrete all broken up, but they would have more likely have filled it in with dirt so that it doesn't cave in. And
Yeah,
they planted a whole bunch of trees in that area, I guess,
Yeah.
to discourage people from wanting to try to dig it up. They have an excuse. Well, we don't want to remove all those nice young trees.
what a
Yeah,
guy who
Jim?
worked on the demolition told me was that they ripped the roof off of the building, took everything out that was in there, and they had a giant concrete shell. And then other people were supposed to take their dump trucks full of construction stuff someplace and dump it for whatever, $5 a ton. The guy that owned that said, do $1 a ton, fill it up. So that way he didn't have to dig it out and he didn't have to go and get all the dirt to fill it back in. So if the Underground World Home is there, in my view, it's the concrete walls full of all the debris from all the other pavilions. But wouldn't that debris just be cool enough on its own?
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
would
Gary
love it.
Gary Stern asked, when the pandemic is over, will 30+ people be invited to your house for the live presentations? Yeah, and Gary, I don't know how to tell you, but you were number 31. Gary's a good friend of ours, lives here in the same town as us. We just Zoomed with him for New Year's Eve. So we'll fit you in. You might have to be on the back patio looking in, but we'll fit you in, Gary.
Bill?
Yes.
And Jim, I actually volunteered to be the first guy to be lowered into the underground home whenever it's dug up. So
Well,
I hope I can still do that for you guys. I'll put on my little miner's hat with a light, and I'll come up with some TV trays or something for you.
Well, it'd be a lot of debris you'd have to dig out of there, as Bill said. I said dirt, but whatever. You had to fill it up or it would cave in.
Well, for the folks that ever saw the CSI New York episode with the guy that lived in the Underground World Home, Trey Calloway, the writer producer of that, is a giant 39 and 64 fan, lives out here. And he did a whole thing where, and I'll see if I can get some shots for it for next week. A killer is living there. But years ago, back, you guys remember the GE information service Genie was like a AOL sort of thing. I wrote a thing and posted online. I later stuck it, I think, on Facebook too, about the guy that basically pops up out of a hatch, and the police found this guy, and he's been living in the Underground World Home because he got to the fair on the last day, didn't see it all, and never went to leave. And I wrote this whole thing with officers Tootie and Muldoon driving car 54, found it. And the guy's name I made Mr. S.P. Lunker, like Spelunker. So I wrote this whole thing and put it out there, and it happened to be an April Fool's. And I illustrated with photos and everything, and people, oh my God, the world, and the black and white TV still down there, and people started passing this thing around that the Underground World's Home was real, and somebody had been living in it. So Trey later said, hey, that's a great idea. My guy was benign. He came out of the World's Fair in search of waffles. Trey's guy came out of the World's Fair at the helm and killed people. So, but I'll see if we can get Trey maybe to join us and talk about his bit.
Yeah, it's interesting in the show, the writers never have complete control over it. in the show, it's actually kind of near the Unisphere, the hole in the ground he comes up with, the sewer or whatever is right next to the Unisphere. And he doesn't go far enough to really get to the actual location, but it suited the purposes of the narrative to go that way. But it was still cool to see it. And just imagine that maybe, and we all know it's probably
Yeah.
filled in, but it's a fun what if.
Oh, it was a great episode. Jim?
Yeah, that sewer grate, I mean, that manhole where he enters the underground home, that manhole is actually there. It's between the pool, along those reflecting pools between the pool of industry and the Unisphere. Halfway in the middle there is that manhole. It's still there. But imagine you have to go down that and really pretty far over to get to the transportation area and under the highway and so on.
Hey, it's Hollywood creativity, right?
The lost back entrance that no one knew about.
Actually, just even over by the Unisphere, if you guys ever look down into the pump room down there where all the pumps are and everything for it, it's fascinating amount of stuff down there.
How do you get in there to look at it?
You wait till the park guys are there, and then you say, "Hey, could I come and take a look in your hole?" I wouldn't open it on your own.
Where is it? Is it under the fountain?
No,
Where is it at exactly?
I have the answer. It's where, you know, where the Trilon would have been. Not too far from there. If you look on Google, you'll see a whole bunch of metal plates. The bunker is about maybe 25 feet by 20 feet or so. It's huge. And it's starting to appear there because everything's sinking around it. But we had poked our head down in there. Some men were working there. And the way you get down there is you lift those, you undo the bolts and you pull those gratings up, and there's a ladder and you go down.
So it's outside the footprint of the circular
Just
fountain.
outside. If you look at Google Earth, you look at the aerial view, the rim, the concrete retaining wall that runs around, you'll see a series of plates. It's where, well, actually you can spot it very easily when you look at where those gratings are, the return water gratings that run from where the fountain jets are over to the side of the pool. They're actually where the pipes go to that bunker, which is just outside the ring, the retaining wall. You'll see it there. In fact, if I'll bring it up on a share, and if Bill in a few minutes wants to let me do it, I'll pop that view of it from Zoom on.
Sure, it'd be
It
great.
looks like it's probably like the 3 or 4 o'clock position if you're looking at it
Yeah,
as it
that's what I'm
comes up.
seeing. Mhm.
Yeah, when I was taking a tour of the fair one day with a friend of mine that's a NYPD sergeant, we came across the Parks Department working there, and he just flashed his badge, said, "Could I take a look?" And I said, "Sure." So they're very, very happy to show off their little installation down there. You should still be a co-host, Jim. So if you find it, you should be able to share your screen.
I hope you can continue these talks after the pandemic ends. It's a really nice way to see everybody's faces.
No, when the pandemic ends, I'll be doing these talks from Paris or from Oslo or someplace other than Granada Hills.
I totally took it off because I had to go back and unmute and now go in and bring it up. Give me a second here. Wish you could do things faster on this in real time. Okay, here's the reflecting pools over in this area. In other words, I have my cursor in the center by the Unisphere. Way I'm moving it, it's towards the pool of industry. Okay, here's the drains where the water returns to the pump, and there's the drain going to it, and the bunker is right here. I'm outlining with the cursor the full size of the bunker. These are the gratings to get down in there. This one right here is the one that lifts up and you can climb down the ladder and get to, I believe there's 2 pumps down there. Maybe more. I think the guy said there's 2 pumps. They do maintain them, and these fountains do work, but they only fill the pool up where the water only goes to maybe about here, because they don't want the kids going in there and drowning and getting hurt. They do it anyway. But right now they actually restored these. They made a mist fountain out of these. So we're hoping the kids will play over here, but I think the kids would rather stay here. It's more fun. But there's where the bunker is.
Very cool.
Great,
That's
thanks,
great.
Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, all kidding aside, when the pandemic ends, whenever it ends, I'll be glad to keep doing these. There's two things: as long as folks are interested, and as long as I keep coming up with subjects. So, my daughter one time asked me, "What are you going to do when you run out of stuff?" I said, "We're going to do a week of your baby pictures." So she reminded me she's a lawyer, so we will not be doing a week of her baby pictures. So, yeah, again, Kenneth Carpenter is putting together a show of some of his theme park experiences. I see some other familiar faces. I've been pleading to try to put some of their stuff. Leslie, you could show us ice cream from around the world, huh? Or around the theme parks.
Well, if I'd been around the world, then yeah, but
Well, yeah,
just Disneyland.
an ice cream tour of Disneyland. She put up a picture yesterday of her, changed her picture or something. It was a giant ice cream float, a banana split at the Rose Parade. So
Yeah.
very, very, very fitting. So
There was no Rose Parade this year, was there?
no, Carol and I were really at a loss for ourselves. This is the first time, Carol, in what, 30 years that you haven't had something to do between Christmas and New Year's?
Talk about 70 years, maybe 65.
Wow.
You haven't been, you haven't been doing floats for 65
No,
years.
no, but I watched the parade every single New Year's Day.
Yeah, but I'm saying for the last 30 years, you've been
Oh, yeah,
decorating
at
floats,
Yes,
so.
yes, at least.
Yeah, Carol and I had been working in the city of Burbank float for years. And if you ever want to see how a Rose Parade float is done, go to billcotter.com, and there's all 4 of the floats we designed are on that. But very, very disappointing that every week this time of year we'd be, either gluing flowers or giving tours of the floats. And this week it was like, oh my God, it just didn't feel like New Year's when it hit because we weren't exhausted. So hopefully next year.
Hey, real quick, if I can ask Jim, what inside the bunker, are they the pumps for the fountains?
Yeah, the pumps are still there. In fact, they've been restored a while back. They were restored and gotten back into order. And we do run the fountains, like during the US Open, various times in the summer, the fountains are running. And the water jets go just as high as they used to, but we just don't fill up the pool all the way.
Well, I was curious about the maintenance of those pumps and that equipment inside there. I presume those hatches are large enough for replacement equipment to go into, or
Yeah, the hatches are about maybe 3 or 4 feet by 3 or 4 feet. They're pretty large.
And is there ventilation inside there to an air duct outside the building or outside that area to somewhere else? I mean,
I
how
don't
is it
know
ventilated?
specifically, but I think one or two of them are actually an air grate.
Yeah.
You saw in the aerial view, there were several of them. Some of them, they're not all to get in there. Some of them are to let air in. Others, there's some bigger ones, I guess, can be completely removed to lower a pump down with a winch. That bunker is definitely very easily accessible.
So if it were to rain, it rains inside the bunker.
Yeah, well, there'd be a sump pump down there.
No, I understand that, but okay, so it's not completely sealed, or?
Oh, no, it's not. When I say a bunker, it's not like sealed like this, it's
like a bomb shelter or something like that.
No, it's not that kind of bunker. In other words, it's just an underground encasing for the pump mechanisms.
Okay.
How large is that pump room anyway?
I would guess about maybe 30 feet by 20 feet. It's large. I mean, you go down there, if the pumps weren't down there, you could build a little house down there. It's big.
Oh, don't tempt people. The next thing you know,
I could tell people that's the underground home.
Yeah.
How noisy is it when their pumps are running?
It's probably pretty noisy. I haven't actually been down there while they were running. In fact,
well, I mean, from above ground, because I presume back in 64 and 65, the thing was going all the time. I wondered how much it impeded,
I walked over it while it was running, and you don't really hear much.
Oh, okay.
The noise of the outside, the people and all that.
Okay.
And there's all kinds, It's pretty quiet. I mean, if you get right over one of the grates and you can probably, you feel a little bit of vibration or a little, I'm sure you hear a little noise. In fact, it was so quiet, I don't even remember just how much you could hear it.
Okay.
Usually the planes from LaGuardia Airport will kind of drown it out.
Oh yeah, they're very noisy.
And at
Okay.
the time of the fair, you had the helicopters running too off the heliport.
Right, and you could, half the shows you'd be in the Carousel of Progress and hear stuff going overhead.
Okay.
Well, these days they're drowned out by the Mr. Softy truck. But they're electric
Yeah.
pumps, so that you don't hear an engine running to drive the pumps, so that
Okay.
it's pretty minimal when you're standing there. And then you got the
Okay.
water of the fountains really drowns a lot of it out too.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Thanks.
Joey,
Bill, if I
meanwhile,
can-
was trying to figure out if the thing is that big. Maybe I can get the pump out. So, sorry, somebody else was saying something?
Bill, I was just saying if I could have the screen briefly, I just have one
Yeah.
or two photos from ground level
Sure, one
here of
second
the area
here.
we've been talking about. Let's see if this works.
You should now be co-host.
Okay, I'll just do desktop so if I don't show anything I really don't want to. Can you see this picture now? It's taken,
Yes.
this is standing inside the fountain underneath the Unisphere, looking toward the pump station. So you can see that
Very
black
nice.
area where the drains go out that you were talking about. And then some of the pumps that are actually part of the fountain itself when it's operating.
Okay.
And I was looking to see if I could find one over the other side of the retaining wall here, and the closest I could come was this one here. So I don't know if these things here are any of the ones that you were talking about for access ports, or whether they're further back that we can't
Those are the
see.
skimmers. If you get on the other
Skimmers?
side of that
Okay.
wall, you'll see the little openings. So when the water level gets too high, it'll drain into those. You open those up and that's where you pull out all the debris that the skimmer takes off the top of the water.
And I see over to the left here actually
Yeah,
is
you
the,
know, if you're on, you can move over to that area where your hand is. That's the bunker. I don't know if you're on.
no, this is an actual photo. I can,
You're in a still fixed.
still
position.
photo, yeah.
You can see the edge of the hatch there, the
There you
line
go.
from it.
They
Yeah,
look like
here,
these
here.
little ones, but they're much bigger. But they're over where you're, in fact, you can see one of the skimmers down a little further. Along the wall, there's several places where there are
Right
skimmers.
there's one.
Right.
Like
Okay,
swimming
that's all.
pools
I hadn't
there.
had a chance to look through it in more detail. I'm sure there's others somewhere, but, well, there's one more that's a little closer. So this
Yeah.
whole light area here, I think, goes over the
Yeah,
pump room, because you can see
That's
the drains
correct.
leading into it.
this one nearest us here is even bigger. That's probably to lower a pump down in.
Very cool. These are from the 2004 anniversary events at the park. We were there. Bill gave a talk at the same time when some of us got a chance to wander around beforehand.
That was a fun day. Well, thanks everybody for joining. And again, so next week we will go and we will visit the Sinclair dinosaurs, the Ford dinosaurs, the GM pavilion. I'm just looking at the map here on the wall. Boy, there's a lot to, we may be here for 2-3 hours next week. The transportation area is just a super part of the fair. So appreciate folks joining. Good to see some familiar faces and some that came back, hadn't seen for a while. So good to see you all, and hope everybody has a great week. And if you're back east with all the winter weather and everything, I hope it's not so bad.
All right. Thank you,
Thank you,
Bill.
Bill.
Happy New Year.
Thanks, Bill. Great
Bye,
job.
Bill.
here, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Talk to you
Take
all
care,
later.
everybody.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next week. Bill.